bank robbery was in progress when police received the call at 12:38 on January 13th, 2006. A short while later, police were rushing into San Isidro, a posh enclave to the north of Buenos Aires. The robbers were still inside when police arrived at the site, which was a tan two-story branch of Banco Ro, one of the country's largest banking institutions. The bank's sole security guard walked out the door while carrying his revolver as authorities set up a perimeter. Before allowing the guard to go, the robbers had emptied the firearm and put its rounds in his pocket. He said there were captives inside, and 10 minutes later, one of them, a young, tense man, was freed. As the country watched live TV, the crooks kidnapped hostages and demanded that the cops serve them pizza. Observers perched in trees prepared to fire if necessary. One robber finally told the cops they were prepared to turn themselves in, yet there was no criminal present when police enforcement entered the bank. They had disappeared without a trace, taking cash and valuables from safe deposit boxes valued at $20 million. So, how did this even happen? What was the sophisticated plan these crooks used? What happened after this incident? Calm down. We are going to subtly settle all of your curiosities as we dive into details. So sit tight and stay tuned with us till the end of this video. However, before that, here's a quick reminder that you can subscribe for free and like the video so that we can boost the algorithm. Comments are most welcome. The situation. 5 robbers who had entered the bank using different disguises were now locked inside with 23 hostages. Police were swarming the streets outside, and they soon made radio contact with one of the robbers, who went by the name of Walter. Walter claimed that although the burglars were aware of their surroundings, they weren't yet prepared to give up. The police should remain in the background until they are. Nobody desired the return of Ramallo. This touched a raw nerve. Argentina was well known for the Ramallo town heist. 3 armed guys had broken into another bank nearby 6 years previously. On this day, the criminals held captives and used them as shields while attempting to flee. That's when things started to go wrong. A robber and 2 hostages were killed when police started shooting. Ramallo was a widespread scandal, but the fact that it occurred live on television added to its terribleness. More than 100 police officers encircled the bank and sealed off the surrounding streets as the news cameras returned to San Isidro. Photographers or snipers occupied any perch with a view of the bank that was open. For more than 6 hours, the nation was transfixed. The police had nicknamed Walter the man in the gray suit. He was instantly famous. The hostages, Walter said, were being treated well. The mood inside seemed oddly ebullient. One point, Walter and another robber could be heard singing happy birthday to a bank employee whose phone had been buzzing with birthday messages from friends and family. At 3:30 in the afternoon, Walter asked for pizzas. The hostages were hungry, he said. Then, only a few minutes later, Walter went silent. For over 3 hours, police leaders and city officials fretted over what to do as further attempts to reach Walter failed. Finally, a team of special forces officers took up a position outside the bank. At 7 p.m., they burst inside. But there was no shootout, no commotion, and no sign of the thieves. The hostages were dispersed on 3 floors, the lobby level, a mezzanine space, and down in a basement conference room, which had been locked from the inside. They were all unharmed. It wasn't until detectives reached the basement that they discovered what the robbers had truly been after. There, in the expanse of the bank's subterranean level, hundreds of reinforced steel safe deposit boxes lined the walls. And in a place like San Isidro, at a time like 2006, those boxes represented a veritable treasure trove. Argentinians are uniquely distrustful of their banks, and for good reason. They've been betrayed by them over and over. Most famously in 2001, when the collapse of the national banking system, known as the Corralito, erased entire fortunes, affecting millions. With no faith in accounts, bank customers began tucking their savings, their cash, jewelry, and other valuables, into safe deposit boxes. And this particular bank, situated in one of the richest enclaves of Argentina, must have seemed especially enticing, flush as its deposit boxes were sure to be with the fortunes of the city's most well-to-do. Somehow, the thieves had smashed open a huge number of the boxes, 143 of the bank's 400, and cleaned them out. But What exactly they'd grabbed or where they'd gone was a mystery. Cops swept every inch of the bank's 3 floors, but failed to locate a single member of the gang. The bank had only 2 exits, both of which had been covered by police since the siege began. All of the building's windows were intact, and the robbers were not hiding among the hostages. They'd simply vanished. The thieves had left a few things behind. Detectives found a battery pack, a tool that they surmised had been used to crack the boxes, a row of toy guns laid neatly on the floor, and a note taped to the wall above the toys. It was handwritten and must have seemed like a taunt. In a neighborhood of rich people without weapons or grudges, it's just money, not love. So now let's rewind and see how the planning was done and the ultimate arrest of the gang. The plan. Araujo, an artist and small-time pot grower, started concocting the plan in 2003 when he rented a house near the bank and began exploring the sewage tunnels beneath. Inspired in part by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he dubbed his scheme the Donatello Project. Posing as an architecture student, he called the Public Works Agency in Acuso to get information on how the ground might handle tunnels. Then he convinced Sebastian Garcia Bolster, a local motorcycle mechanic, to join his team as a civil engineer. They calculated how to drill 15 meters diagonally into the bank, essentially making their tunnel a triangular hypotenuse between the building's basement and the sewer. Doing so would require some heavy machinery. To make a hole the size of a soda bottle with pickaxes took 1 hour. It was impossible. So we had to bring in a 220-watt generator so we could use an electro-pneumatic drill, Araujo said. As their plans came together, they found more men to be part of their heist. Career crook Ruben Beto de la Torre was recruited as muscle, and Luis Mario Vitella Solanis came on as well. He would become the designated police negotiator. They recruited another man referred to only in the film as the Doc and said to be both a lawyer and a sophisticated thief. After years of tinkering, the plan came into focus. Rather than going through the sewer to exit to local waters, as law enforcement would likely predict, Araujo's team would go deeper into the city's bowels. The crew bought an old van and customized it to have a floor hatch so they could park it above a manhole and climb directly into the vehicle without ever going out onto the street. They recruited a man named Julian Zalo Echeverria to be their driver and someone called the Kid to serve as extra muscle. The demonstration on Friday, January 13th, 2006 at about 12:38 p.m., a group of thieves burst through the bank's front door with pistols drawn and prepared to kidnap hostages. The bank manager was escorted to the basement where the safety and security boxes were by the Solanas, who had gone to the top level to fetch him. There, he compelled the security guard to hand over his gun before forcing him to leave the structure. Araujo and Beto concentrated on controlling captives and securing exits on the ground floor of the bank. As soon as the police entered the bank, Solanas pretended to be negotiating with them in order to buy more time for his colleagues to steal the money. In order to confuse police officers and snipers looking through the bank's windows, he put on a fake mustache, yarmulke, and glasses. He made a point of freeing the captives at 2:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Bolster was in the basement using a special cannon to break open deposit boxes as quickly as possible. I didn't stop to see what was inside or if it actually opened or anything, Bolster said, just breaking all the locks. After 2 hours, they'd cracked open 143 boxes, and it was time to escape. Solanas told the authorities they were ready to give up. "Bring us some pizzas, bring us some soda, we'll have a little food and surrender," Solanas recalls telling the negotiators. He knew they would be out of the building by the time forces entered. To hide their DNA, the criminals sprayed chlorine all around the bank, and they dispersed random hair strands to confuse crime scene investigators. Then they disappeared, disappearing down their tunnels and into the sewer. 2 little boats, one with a motor, were waiting for them there. The men had to wade through the sewage to get to their van, which was 14 streets distant because the motor wouldn't start. In order to secure the wealth, Araujo spread out on top of it in one of the boats. They managed to get to the van and drive to their hiding place. The police were in the dark. "Right away, the first thing I wanted to do was turn on the TV and make sure they weren't behind," Araujo says in the film. "Here we were with the money so far away. The men then divided the money evenly amongst themselves and parted ways." Solanas says he drove off with 4 trash bags full of cash. Authorities were at first baffled by the escape. They didn't even realize the gang had tunneled out until a bank worker spotted a piece of out-of-place furniture covering the hole. The take was enormous. The job was picture perfect. The cops had no leads and no one had been hurt. The robbery of the century appeared to have been successfully pulled off by Araujo and company, who can now relax and enjoy their wealth. One loose end, but a few weeks after the robbery, Beto discovered a problem. He states in the movie, "I come back home one day and notice my stash bag is out of place. I noticed that the money stack had significantly decreased." His wife, Alicia de Tullio, confessed to him that she had stolen some of Beto's safety deposit money and roughly $300,000 from him without his consent. The two, who had been together 18 years, got into a blowout argument. Beto demanded she bring back what she took immediately and left the house with his remaining loot in a huff. Furious, de Tullio called the police and turned in her husband. The men realized their perfect plan had been thwarted. Solanas recalls the doc calling him frantically, saying, "De La Torre's wife is going to turn us all in soon. She's asking for each of us to pay her 300 grand. If we won't, she's going to give us up." Solanas replied, "Doc, she can go fuck herself. I'm not giving her a thing. Let Beto fix all this with her and leave me out of it." But Beto couldn't fix what his wife had done. De Tullio served as a confidential witness while Beto, Bolster, Solanas, Araujo, and Zalo Echeverria were all detained and accused. She claimed to know nothing about the circumstance. Gaston Garbos, the prosecuting district attorney, is quoted in the movie as saying, "There is no proof that permits us to determine what transpired between Beto and de Tullio for the purposes of this case. I believe it has to do with the money and wasn't motivated by resentment about the presence of another lady." Beto confirmed that she had financial motivations. She valued it more than her family. "And there was the tragic conclusion to my narrative, and I believe everyone else's as well," he said. 2010 saw the incarceration of Beto for 15 years, Araujo for 14, Zalo Echeverria for 10, and Bolster for 9. Solanas consented to a separate accelerated trial where he was sentenced to 14 years in prison for both the robbery and additional offenses that were discovered to be connected to it at the same time. The doctor and the child escaped capture. A happy ending. All of the men are now free and honored for their infamous theft, even though none of them ever completed their sentences in full. Other individuals suddenly admired this and saw it as, "I don't know, something out of the norm," according to Araujo. In addition to the gang's tale being immortalized in the 2020 thriller comedy The Heist of the Century, Solanas has gained over 30,000 followers on Twitter. Araujo claims that their tale has a pleasant conclusion. Everyone who had a part in this story came out on top. Judges received respect, prosecutors prospered in their careers, and police officers later became detectives. According to him, the victim's insurance paid out more than they had. And with the unordinary happy ending, we have reached the end of today's show. What do you think of the two who were never caught? Do let us know your wild guesses in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up. It will help us to understand our audience and allows YouTube to suggest similar videos to you. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you at the next one.